morning, everybody. This is John for MTG Nexus, coming at you with the flavor of the week, the flavor of the weekend, the flavor of the month, Tibalt's Trickery. So those of you who might have watched the stream on Thursday and Friday morning, we ran into the all-in version of this deck that is like 50-some lands, 2 or 3 Tibalt's Trickery, 4 Violent Outburst, and some Emrakul's. Since then, people like Kannister, Sodek, Spiderspace, a few other people have been working on this deck. I don't think it had any particularly notable results this past weekend, but it did get some iterations this weekend. And so this list is kind of an amalgamation of Spiderspace's list, Kannister's list, and an older mana base. So the mana base might be a little bit shaky because I didn't go back and readjust that. But basically, Kannister is streaming it this morning. His sideboard's a little bit different than this. His main deck's a little bit different than this. Basically, 3 Tibalt's Trickery, some Simian Spirit Guides. They've added 4 Ardent Plead along with 4 Violent Outburst. And then you have a bunch of big hits, whether it be Omniscience, Brilliant Ultimatum, which is exile the top 5 cards. You may play lands and cast spells from one of those piles. If you do, you may cast it without its converted mana cost. Obviously, Omniscience allows you to cast any of the big dumb idiots you happen to draw. Or you can just cascade, or you can just get, play a Kozilek, play an Erlemog, play an Emrakul, or play the other Emrakul. Obviously, Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, still probably the primary hit besides Omniscience if you have idiots in your hand. Emrakul the Promised End, obviously allowing you to mess with your opponent's things. Ulamog allowing you to destroy something. And then, obviously, Kozilek allows you to draw cards. Not quite as great, but it is another annihilating giant idiot that you generally can play on turn 2 or turn 3 here with Simian Spirit Guide and Gemstone Caverns. Nothing too fancy. The meta is pretty well prepared for this deck at this point, so I don't expect us to do like particularly fantastic, but I did want to get a feel for the deck. 3 copies of Nephalia Academy. This comes in against any type of discard effects. Allows you to put your whatever card they're discarding back on top of your deck. Throes of Chaos, I'm not 100% sure on this one, but I'm guessing because of the retrace, this is something that allows you to cast over and over again. Try to just jam through counter spells. Spiderspace, some people are trying things like Mystical Dispute and stuff. My Spiderspace is the first person I've seen that's using Teferi Time Raveler as kind of a way to disrupt what your opponent's doing. Obviously, this is pretty good in the mirror match. Very good against control decks if you happen to land it. Makes their counter spells kind of useless and allows you to do your thing. A couple copies of Mindbreak Trap, probably primarily for the mirror match. I can't see any other things where you'd want this other than maybe Storm. This allows you to counter, whatever big idiot they happen to, or big spell they happen to get off the Tibalt's Trickery. A couple copies of Dismember to deal with any type of hate bears or anything, and then a couple copies of Blast Zone as kind of a catch-all that allows you to try to power through like some type of disruption piece that you can't happen to interact with in any other way without having something like an Abrupt Decay or something that you really can't play in your cascading deck here. So beyond that, we will see how this goes. See him dropping some frames. I wonder what's going on with that. But anyways, don't have a ton of time this morning, so let us get into the league and see how badly we can do. So, somebody already has 4 trophies. Alright. So obviously this is a deck people were prepared for at this point, so I'm really not anticipating doing particularly well, but this is one of those things where I could easily see Trickery getting even banned today. I don't think Wizards will, but people are still hoping for bans of like Trickery or Uro or whatever. I don't think we're going to see any bans quite yet. It's going to be another week or two. This is one of those decks, though. The scary part about this deck, unlike something like Oops All Spells or Belcher, there's a lot of flexibility in what this deck is trying to execute, and it's kind of scary, actually. Obviously it's not a guaranteed hit anymore with this style of build, but I still think it's, rather scary that people have iterated it this far. Granted, this is one of those decks that plays like really quickly, so like you're still an all-in combo deck at the end of the day, you know. So, speaking of all-in combos, we're on the play. Now we're on the draw. Okay. Keep our 7-card hand here. Up against the blue deck. Opponent's going to immediately know what we're on, but, you know, that's whatever. We just jam here, hope for the best. Presumably our opponent will have a counterspell. Ardent Plea. Probably discard an Emrakul here. They have a Path to Exile. Path would kind of suck, honestly. Brazen Borrower, sure. This time our opponent actually has a counterspell. Sure. This game is pretty much over. Presumably our opponent will play their Petty Theft and move on. I guess they can't because of Violent Outburst, but still kind of funny. I don't think it's going to get any better, so... Alright, it's pretty much game over. So, Throes of Chaos, I presume, come in here. Teferis also come in. I don't think this is a Mind Break Trap matchup. Probably go down some amount of nonsense. guess they could have Blood Moon, but I don't really think I can afford to Blast Zone that. Or try to Blast Zone that, obviously. What else am I cutting in a situation like this? Just another Brilliant Ultimatum. A couple Ardent Pleas, but only one land, so I think this is also a mulligan. Yeah, I mean, I guess we keep this one. Put back a Caverns and an Emrakul. This is very much a, do you have Force of Negation hand or not? Presumably they do if they mulliganed themselves to 5 cards. Well, I mean, we're not here to not jam, so do you have it? Opt. This is fun. Blue deck's gonna blue deck. Sure. Alright, I mean that at least kind of gives us a prayer, although not very likely. Violent Outburst at the end of turn. Problem is that we only have one Tybalt's Trickery left in our deck, and yeah. That's a card that will certainly get their attention. Alright, let's move on. We don't have enough lands to operate here. Not unexpected when running into a blue deck, but still, you know. This is the thing we lose to. Alright, we're on the draw here. We have 3 lands and Ardent Plea. Yeah, I think we keep this hand. Log, I guess. Yeah, I'm supposed to pitch Brilliant Ultimatum. Discard spell. Yep. Everybody's prepared. Be prepared. Let's say they have main deck Surgical Extraction? That'd be kind of nuts. Liana next. Blood Moon would also kind of suck. So it's Jund. Interesting. Jund with Urborg in it. That's kind of a new one. Hey, just 3 more lands away from a Brilliant Ultimatum. What is going on? Trust me, if I had something that I could cast with that, I would have already cast it. I was going to say, why would you leave anything back? It's pretty clear that if I'm winning by like a mile. That's a whole lot of Seasoned Pyromancer going on. Woohoo! Simian Spirit Guide. We're doing good there. Alright, so I'm presuming this is one of the matchups Throes of Chaos are in for. Also feels like a Nephalia Academy matchup. Probably board down some of the Gemstone Caverns on the play. Missions. Yeah, hands keep. Mana's a little bit awkward in this hand. Because Ether Hub's a one-shot, Gemstone Mine's just a colorless land, or Gemstone Cavern's just a colorless land here. I mean, we're obviously getting discard spelled on one. Pass turn. Sure. We have the third discard spell? Nope, Nihil Spellbomb, sure. Why the heck would you bring a Nihil Spellbomb against us? Whatever. Ah! Suppose I deserve that. Oh, they get to Spellbomb it away. Yeah, I guess we do it now, just in case we hit like an Omniscience or something stupid. Okay, there we go. Big Mommy. Don't think we changed anything here. Considering I've done more losing at the moment. Sand's fine, I guess. I mean, we're gonna get discard spelled on one, so it's kind of whatever. Gotta take Violent Outburst. Odd part with Simeon is it doesn't pair particularly well with Ardent Plea here, so we're not going to be able to turn 3 regardless. Besides, our opponent's complaining about my stuff, and they're playing Jund in 2021. So unless they've got Valky in their deck, yeah, I really don't want to hear too much from them. Double black. They playing Smallpox or something stupid in their deck? Collective Brutality? Okay, sure. I'm presuming that's what this is, at least. Yep, this is a Brutality. Which, ironically, is completely useless. Really need to draw another land, that's why I'm letting them discard that even with Nephalia Academy. Or Nephalia, yeah, whatever the heck this is. Sure. Really? All I need to draw is another land and I can't do it. There's 24 lands in my deck. My opponent gets to Thoughtseize us like every turn from now on. So we have to top deck a colored source this turn. Oh my lord, this is pathetic. It's funny, but it's pathetic. Alright. So basically what was going to happen is our opponent was just going to continue Inquisition us, and the only thing I could do was like hope to top deck exactly land into another one of those spells, because we can't put Ardent Plea back on top when we don't have the mana to cast it. So mana was awkward there, to put it nicely. Which I did mention at the beginning of the deck tech that I think the land base needed some work from the list that I had copied from. But you know, you need a third land too, so that didn't exactly help. Because the Simian only helps cast Violent Outburst, it doesn't really help cast Ardent Plea. So 0-2 so far, yay! Played against a counterspell deck and a Jund deck who cried the entire match, even though they had the necessary tools to win. So, and we got a little bit unlucky game number 1 when we, yeah. So, it happens. So, how's everyone doing this morning? We're up against a Luris deck, so probably involves discard spells. I still think we keep this hand regardless. We're on the play too? Sure. Neither. Oh, we're up against Burn. Well, sorry, I've got some bad news for you, mate. I'm afraid got some bad news. So I don't know that I actually bring anything in here, honestly. Maybe Blast Zones, but that's a little slow against Burn. I guess I bring in Teferi for something like Deafening Silence and Deflecting Palm. We're on the play, so what do I even board out? Maybe a couple of the Tendos? Question mark. So first off, let's see if it doesn't eat a ban today. Which is certainly one possibility. So yeah, have fun, Lucarian. Hope class goes well, man. So the thing I would say about the deck is, in some ways it's a lot like the other various glass cannon decks in the format. It's not as... What am I pitching here? Feels like So what I'm going to say with a pinch of salt is I haven't played Belcher, so I can't speak to that deck specifically. Eidolon. Roiling Vortex. Okay, that's a fair one. So that will deal us 5 damage minimum. Actually 10 damage, which is quite a bit. So we could actually be dead here, which is ironic. But we're not here to not go for it, so take 5 and like it. Alright, moving on. So I would say of the 3 Glass Cannon decks I've played, Neo Brand is the hardest to play. And yes, there is some play to it, as much as it appears there isn't. I think we can do better. So maybe I'm supposed to keep that hand turn 3, but we still need to top deck a land. This hand obviously is a mulligan. This hand also is a mulligan. I guess we keep this one. Back that. And Teferi, I guess. Opponent kept a 7-card hand, so we're probably in a lot of trouble. Yeah, they will. I don't intend to play the deck a lot, don't get me wrong there. Give another Vortex. Oop, apparently you're just going for the fast start and hoping that that's good enough. Maybe they have Deafening Silence, who knows. Path to Exile, maybe? Woo! That was a big hitter. Sure. Fairy Time Raveler. Opponent with 2 cards in hand, so actually some question as to what spell I'm supposed to play here. Doesn't seem I'm very likely to die if I play Teferi here, so I'm just going to go ahead and bounce Goblin Guide to screw with their mana a little bit. And those Rift Bolts aren't going to do anything. Decent chance I was supposed to Ardent Plea here, but presume, well, if they kill Teferi, we know they have Deflecting Palm, and they didn't, so are we dead? Looks like I'm dead. Oh, go to 1, sure. Needs to be a good one. Guess that one counts. So, back to my thought process. I'd say Neobrand is the hardest, or yeah, Neobrand is the hardest one to pilot of the 3 I've played. Oops folds to Graveyard Hate, but not as many different counter spells. Like Force of Negation isn't quite as good against that deck, but obviously it's vulnerable to Graveyard Hate. This deck, depending on the configuration, this deck's more vulnerable to like discard effects and such. And man, it's a Yorion deck. Okay, this is clearly a mulligan. This is where being on the mall kind of sucks, but I still think we keep this one. Put back an Emrakul. What is a Yorion deck mulliganing to Oblivion? That's interesting. Scalding Tarn's not good for the home team. At least with this setup, we get to double go off, or double attempt to go off, I should say. Violent Outburst into Ardent Plea. Opponent with all the fancy stuff. Do another one. How many times are we gonna do Into the Ape? That's like the only hit in our main deck that's like absolutely terrible. And how many times have we hit it now? That's just funny. Yeah, 8 beat down ain't gonna beat the Uro. Just saying. All right, let's move on. Teferi's in. I guess we bring in Throes of Chaos. To answer your question, the deck seems relatively easy to pilot. But as far as like where it is on the pantheon of glass cannon decks, kind of hard to say. First off, I think people like, okay, from a burn player perspective, I was kind of caught up in this too. The deck is very easy to interact with if you want to interact with it. This hand doesn't have any of the things we need. This hand has some of the stuff we need, but also not enough mana. Land, please. Sure. One of the things we actually didn't want to draw. That is really, really bad for the home team because we don't have any basics in our deck. Alright, well that was fun. Yeah, the mana base I copied was an earlier mana base from like Friday or something. So probably should have updated to one of either Kannisters or Spiderspace's lists. So it doesn't surprise me that the mana base has been a bit of an issue. Magic Dan's usually on blue decks, so This is going to be rough. I think this hand's a keep. Could still very well be on, like, yep. Like I said, they're usually on the blue deck. Apparently, the opponent's on the mirror match. Oh no, we have Simian Spirit Guide. It's come back to bite us in the ace. I don't know how many times so far. I'm gonna say no, we definitely have Simian Spirit Guide. I think we've cascaded more into Simian Spirit Guide than we have big hitters today. I mean, we've gotten situations where, nice, War Dog, nice. I think we have to bring in the... Do we bring in the Blast Zones on the play? Or on the draw? Feels like it's a little slow against opposing Teferis. I think this is mostly about speed, but I don't know for sure, so... Sure. I guess we hope turn 2 is good enough. So if we hit, we win, probably. How's that worded? Cast spells from one of those piles if you cast it without paying its mana cost. Choose pile to play for free. One last Trickery in our deck. Our opponent just let that happen? Seems like a poor choice, but okay. Okay. So our opponent mulliganed to 3 without having a combo piece. Seems incorrect. So, the problem with the 5-0 deck lists is only one of however many similar deck lists get printed. Wizards usually prints them on the Magic Online website. Or you can just check Goldfish, because Goldfish usually translates the lists from the 5-0 dumps into their data. So you can either just check Goldfish or check Wizards thing. Typically each format gets updated once every like 3 days, because they do like a different format each day. So it's like Pioneer one day, Standard one day, Legacy one day, and then Modern one day. So it's like a 3 or 4 day cycle. So usually within 2 to 3 days of the 5-0s is when your 5-0 would get published. And I think it's within any list that has to be 10 different cards from a list that's published. So decks that see a lot of play like Prowess and Burn and such, you only have like a small chance of seeing your 5-0 published, unfortunately. So, or I guess her 5-0 in this case. But so I think the swing matchup in this league was the Jund matchup where we didn't hit. We hit like a Simian Spirit Guide on one of our swings, and we got stuck on lands. So the big takeaway for me is the land base needs cleaned up a little bit. Obviously, you know, when you're playing the non-all-in version, it's still an all-in version, don't get me wrong, but when you're not playing the 51 land, 3 Tybalt Trickery, 4 Violent Outburst, 3 or 4 Emrakul version, and you're playing this version where you're a little bit more able to hit a wider variety of things, you know, obviously you have a fail rate. I think we failed more to our mana base than we did to you know, like not hitting the right color land for Ardent Plea a couple of times. We were able to set up a couple spots. I screwed up by not putting a basic somewhere in my 75. That Field of Ruin from the Yorion player got us. So, you know, while we had a 2-3 and it was kind of disappointing, you know, we beat Burn and we beat the Mirror, which is, you know, kind of whatever in this meta. You know, it does feel like this deck has some game and some draws against control decks, which is kind of concerning, actually. That, yes, you're a dog to them, but you can potentially beat control decks. I think this deck is for real, but I don't know that it's format breaking, but in some ways it is format warping. Because you have to build your deck with this deck in mind. You know, a deck like Neobrand has a certain fail rate. A deck like Oops All Spells is vulnerable to, you know, graveyard hate, basically. Belcher is, you know, a weird one because, you know, it's a lot like this deck and Oops, that it has certain vulnerabilities. You know, issues with mulliganing because of mana. Only has 8 true win cons in the deck with Recross the Pass and Belcher in the main deck. And can get hit by something like Pithing Needle, or if you can't go off with Iron Crag Feet, can get hit by like a Braids and such, or, you know, Deflecting Palm, you know, that kind of stuff. So the problem I have with this deck is it just requires so little. It requires 3 lands and a Cascade spell. You know, whether you want to build it like this or you want to build it like the older versions with just the guaranteed hit of an Emrakul. Really kind of hard to say on that. I don't have enough iterations with the deck, and this isn't the style of deck that necessarily appeals to me. I would equate this deck to, I don't know if some of you guys were around for it when I was, when the companions were first released, before the fixing of the companion rules. The Garuda combo deck in Pioneer, I think, is the best extrapolation I can give. That was a deck that you had access to a guaranteed Garuda on turn 3 or 4, and if your opponent couldn't interact with your mana, they were generally dead. You know, kill your mana dorks, blow up a land, or be able to counter the Garuda. You know, because they couldn't Thoughtseize it, they couldn't you know, do any of that. And that deck was a very consistent turn 4 deck, but it had a certain fail rate because you had to continue chaining copies of clones, and sometimes you'd miss. But you'd end up with a big board, but sometimes your opponent could still kill you. In some ways, that's what this deck reminds me of, or, you know, the closest thing we might get to like a Hypergenesis. The thing with Hypergenesis, though, is Hypergenesis would be vulnerable to a different subset of cards than this one is. Hypergenesis would be vulnerable to Chalice on 0, some other stuff like that. So, is this healthy for the format? Probably not. Is it okay on a power level, as long as people are respecting it? Probably. I don't know. Like, as a burn player, I don't like to see piles like this. I don't like to see piles like this, or Oops All Spells, or Neobrand, or Belcher. But with Force of Negation in the format, and I think Modern is rapidly approaching becoming Wizard's top tier Eternal format, especially with Modern Horizons 2 on the horizon, and Legacy not really getting a ton of support. I'm really torn. I don't like cards like this being in the format, but some people just like this style of deck. Does it really suck to lose to? Yeah. Does it really suck to play with? Kinda. I'm one of those people that I like my decisions making mattering to a certain degree. In this deck, it just doesn't matter most of the time. You either do the thing or you don't do the thing. So, don't know that I got a whole lot more to add. But, yeah. So, if there's going to be any other questions, I'm going to wrap up this video for now and for the YouTubes, because I got to get ready for work in a half hour anyway. We'll be back streaming tomorrow with something not named this deck. As to which deck it's going to be, I honestly don't know. I got to kind of decompress from playing this version, and yeah. I want to thank everybody for hanging out this morning. Fairly decent stream overall, especially with a number of the big guns already out streaming. I see Croakies and Yellow Hat and Hoogland and Aspiring Spike, and a lot of people are just out streaming this morning, so appreciate appreciate those of you guys that showed up, guys and gals that showed up. So this has been John for MTG Nexus, and I think I'm gonna go try to host Spike. Not that that really matters, but yeah, Spike's the only one that is probably streaming Modern. Yellow Hat might be, but he's already ridiculously large enough. He don't need help.